and future successes. In summary, pre-primary education is a foundational stage that significantly impacts a child's development, preparing them not just for success in school, but for productive life. I submit.
Yes, thank you very much, Elizabeth. And I think, again, in quick succession, just to have Daphne also pick it up from there, because you're an ECD specialist, I think we would want to know, from your perspective, if there is a nuance that you feel you want to add to what Elizabeth just said. Yes.
Thank you very much, Brian. I think I would echo also what the Assistant Commissioner said. It's a pleasure to be here, and it's an honor I take not so lightly. I think Madam Elizabeth has covered most of the benefits with a lot of emphasis on the benefits to the child and the society. I think I want to highlight just two key things. One, when we look at pre-primary, it's normally looked at that, okay, it is something, you know, if you can afford, if you are able to, then you can go to pre-primary. And really, most of the barriers that most people do not attend pre-primary is the cost.
Yes.
But we want to look at it as an investment because of the benefits that it has to the child. And then we also want to say that in addition to the child, the benefits of pre-primary also escalate to the education system. And so the Ministry of Education also has a big stake in seeing that they actually deliver this pre-primary education. Why? I think it was highlighted in what Angela said and what the previous speaker said. High repetition rates. So we see children who are enrolling late into primary one because of these delays. I think we had a very good example from the child speaker here.
Yes.
We also seeing that the dropout rates are high. When I start school late, I can't keep up with my peers. People in class with me are younger than me. I'm not catching up with what is happening. And so by P5, P6, I don't even see the value of education anymore, and I will drop out. This, again, leads to a lot of inefficiencies in the education system. So I think, as UNICEF, we say we want to call for an equitable approach to access of early childhood education. There's been a lot of emphasis on rural communities, which I thoroughly agree with, but I also want to highlight another key stakeholder. These are children with disabilities and development delays. Even within Kampala, more often, these are the children who are left out of school for various reasons. They need more technical things to be able to access pre-primary education. But in the spirit of the SDG, of us having equal access, all children, nobody left behind, I really would like to emphasize that this is the goal. This is what we should be looking forward to. Thank you.
Yes, thank you again, Daphne. And you know, when you left at a point of us trying to have equal access and aligning or realigning with the SDGs, and I think that in the broader scheme of things, and given that many countries are trying to achieve this, and then I'll just try to loop in Joe Baker to give us a picture of how, as Uganda, we are comparing to other countries in regards to provision of free pre-primary education.
Thanks, Brian. I'm happy to give a global context and look at how Uganda fits. So Human Rights Watch has surveyed the domestic legislation of every country in the world, and we find that there are at least 107 countries that in their national law guarantee at least 1 year of free pre-primary education. And there are many countries that not only guarantee 1 year, but they guarantee 2 years or 3 years, or in some cases even 4 years of free pre-primary. And the number is growing as governments recognize all of the benefits that we're talking about today. But let's look at just the African continent. So, for example, Tanzania offers 1 year of free pre-primary. Ghana has offered 2 years of free and compulsory pre-primary since 2008. And Benin also offers 2 free years since 2006. Equatorial Guinea also provides 2 years of free pre-primary, and Gabon provides 3. The number of countries is growing on the continent. So, for example, in 2022, Madagascar adopted a new law guaranteeing 1 year of free and compulsory pre-primary. And last year, Sierra Leone adopted a very far-reaching new education law that guarantees 13 full years of free education, starting with 1 year of pre-primary all the way through secondary school. Now, just since 2015, at least 16 countries globally have adopted or amended legislation to provide free pre-primary or to expand access. And we know that this can make a huge difference. So, for example, looking at a different part of the world, when Azerbaijan adopted a new law guaranteeing free pre-primary, the participation rates skyrocketed from 25% to 83% in just 4 years. So finally, I want to note, I think the Sierra Leone example is particularly important to note because it is one of the poorer countries on the continent. In fact, the per capita GDP of Uganda is twice the per capita GDP of Sierra Leone. Yet Sierra Leone has prioritized education for its children. It's dedicating more than 20% of its national budget for education. Unfortunately, Uganda only devotes 8%. So I think one lesson we can learn from this is if a poor country like Sierra Leone can provide free nursery for all their children, I think Uganda can also. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. And indeed, that statement was very stark because when you said it and you mentioned Sierra Leone, it's what also occurred to me just from hearing you say that Sierra Leone is doing this and Uganda hasn't. So I think that is a key thing to take away, that priorities and why we need to prioritize. I think that Daphne had also briefly hinted on what the cost and the benefit is. I think we shall still get later to that in detail, but then when you give that picture, I hope that we can be able to see why this is really important. We shall just move on to the end and have Hajat Fatuma also come in. I know that earlier on, and I like the fact that you were in when we're having the conversation with Kevin here, the child from Mukono. But from a teacher's perspective, we also want to know what has been your experience, because then you're in a classroom setting and you're able to interact with children that have been to preschool and those who haven't been. What has been your experience like? Oh, Hajat, you might want to come a little closer to the microphone. Is it off? Try speaking into it again. Oh, it's definitely on. Off, rather. Yes.
Thank you so much, Brian, for inviting me here as a classroom teacher and a teacher who has been in class for the last 28 years and teaching primary 1 at Nakasero Primary School. I'm so grateful to come and share my experiences with the children who have attended nursery schools. They tend to be more comfortable when they come to us in primary 1. Those who have been in nursery school, they are more comfortable with the teachers, with their peers, and they have already developed some skills like sharing, taking turns, and cooperation. They are familiar with basic concepts. They have been introduced to ideas like colors. When they come, they know the colors, the shapes, numbers, letters. When it comes to reading, they have already got the foundation of reading, the syllables, the sounds. If you happen to get a child who comes from a very good nursery school, you find that the child doesn't have any problem. They can read simple words, short sentences, and some short stories. These child, they come to us in primary 1 when they have already developed fine motor skills and they had opportunities to practice drawing, writing, and they can even coordinate eye and coordination. When they come to us in primary 1, they have already got the routine, school routine. They are familiar to the learning structure, environment, and makes it easy for them to adjust to the primary school routine. When they come to us in primary schools, our work is very easy because they are ready. They love the school. They know what is in the school. And we teachers, we enjoy teaching such learners. They know health activities when they come in the primary school. They can look after themselves. They can control their emotions. In case of anything, they can control their emotions. Those, during COVID-19, in my school, it is a UPE school, whereby many children were not going to school, and when it came to after the COVID, we had a big number of children coming to primary 1 without going to nursery schools. Before COVID, we were not receiving such learners because many parents try to take their children to nursery schools. But during COVID-19, we received many. And being Nakasero is a UPE school, we have parents who are not earning very well. So they can't afford to go to some nursery schools. They bring them in P1 class when they are 7 years. These children, when they come, they have not attended nursery school. Sometimes they don't have love for the school because they are beginning it for the first time. They cannot share with their peers, and even the teachers. We try so much that they share with us. They need extra support in adopting the classroom setting. We normally find that with such children, they lack familiarity. These learners are not familiar to the ideas like colors, shapes, numbers, letters. They don't know. These learners need more support to develop the coordination. Sometimes they cannot coordinate. The handling of pencil, the movement, the hand movement. Since all those activities, they normally receive them in a nursery school.
But also, Hadja, just right there, I'm a bit curious when you say the extra support that they need. So in your setting, you as a teacher, do you then schedule this in terms of extra classes?
Yes. When we receive such children, in the P1 class, we have those who attended nursery, as he said, and those who never attended nursery school.
Yes.
So those who never attended nursery school, we need to go back to the basics, the foundation. They don't have the language. Since they acquire language in the nursery, they don't know how to write. So we need we give them extra support. Yeah. That's why we group them in that way.
Oh, first way, group them in that way, like he mentioned?
Like he mentioned.
Exactly as he mentioned.
But
that you'll have,
mine is different from his. By the time we leave, like second term,
yes,
we mix them up. Because a child who is already mature, 7 years, whatever you say, it goes on the brain. And they pick very fast because they are mature enough. Yes.
Okay.
So, those are some of the experience I have.
Yes.
For the children who have attended nursery and those who have not attended.
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you very much, Hajat. And just as you were talking and I was looking in the audience, I happened to see someone who equally taught me while I was in primary, Miss Chavanji right here at the front. And I couldn't help but think, I hope I wasn't a problem. I attended a little bit of nursery school for just a year. So I hope I wasn't emotionally all over the place and you're trying to get me into one place. But thank you for being here. And then maybe we shall get back to the panel in terms of still understanding, and I'll go back to Miss Elizabeth from the Ministry of Education. One of the things that we have definitely been asking ourselves, and even as Joe was speaking, you could hear things such as if we could have free pre-primary education. So to ask you, what are the challenges that you think have been created by the absence of this free pre-primary education in Uganda?
Thank you very much, Brian. Pre-primary education, according to Uganda's decision to forego investment in pre-primary education, such as nursery schools and kindergartens, can be analyzed through a cost-benefit framework to understand the implications on various socio-economic fronts. Here is an exploration of this scenario. For example, cost of not having pre-primary education. This causes or brings out a number of educational disadvantages. The lower academic achievement. Research indicates that children who miss out on pre-primary education often start primary school, as she has mentioned, with less developed cognitive and social skills, resulting in lower academic performance. She also mentioned about, or other speakers mentioned about, the increased dropout rates. Children who struggle in the early grades are more likely to drop out before completing their education. According to the economic impact, lower future earnings. Without a strong educational foundation, children may have reduced academic and career prospects, leading to lower lifetime earnings, higher remedial costs. The education system may incur high costs to provide remedial education, like you've been hearing her, that they must group the learners, and they have the same time as they are handling those ones who completed the nursery education. They are again handling these ones that have never tested it. Social inequality, widening gap. Children from wealthier families who can afford private pre-primary education will have a head start, exacerbating social economic disparities. Cycle of poverty. Lack of early education perpetrates a cycle of poverty, as disadvantaged children remain trapped in low-paying jobs. Some of the developmental issues. We have the delayed social skills. Early childhood education is crucial for developing social skills, which can impact personal relationships and professional success later in life. Mental health. Children who miss early education opportunities might face increased stress and anxiety due to academic struggles affecting their mental health. So, benefits of not having pre-primary education, if we may enlist them, because they are there. The benefits, of not having pre-primary education. Immediate cost savings, budget relief. By not investing in pre-primary education, the government saves on immediate costs related to building infrastructure, hiring teachers, and developing curriculum for these early education programs. Reallocation of funds. Resources can be reallocated to other pressing needs, such as primary and secondary education, health care, or infrastructure development. Focus on primary education, enhance primary school resources, concentrating to limited resources on improving primary education could enhance the quality of education at this level, potentially benefiting all students. Teacher training. Funds saved from not operating pre-primary could be used better to train primary school teachers to handle children with diverse education backgrounds. Parental involvement. Like during the COVID-19 era, in the absence of formal pre-primary education, parents used to take a more active role in early childhood education, potentially leading to stronger family bonds because they had their children all the time, and personalized learning experiences. But we need to remember that access to pre-primary education is essential for every child in Uganda to have the chance to survive, thrive, and meet their full potential.
Yes.
However, any attempts, mark that, however, any attempts to do away or ignore the provision of pre-primary education will lead to long-term and short-term consequences. And allow me to enlist these ones as well. To start with the short term, many have been mentioned, but when a child of age 3 to 5 is not provided with pre-primary education, he or she, as they mentioned, by Job Buck, the Children's Rights Advocacy Director, he or she misses out on early stimulation to learn when the brain is growing at its fastest, thus leading to mental retardation and resentment for learning. They already mentioned the increased dropout rates among learners at various levels. All these are short-term consequences. Increased repetition of classes leading to financial losses. Enrolling underage or overage, we have heard from him, affects their ability to understand the content at that level. When we go to the long-term consequences, ladies and gentlemen, we look at the workforce competitiveness, the skill deficit. A lack of early education may result in a workforce that is less skilled and less competitive in the global market. Under economic growth, long-term economic growth could be hampered by a less educated populace, affecting the country's overall development. Under public health, increased health costs. Poor education is linked to poorer health outcomes, which may increase public health costs in the long run. Intergenerational effects. Education impacts not just individuals, but also their children, meaning the negative effects can persist across generations. If I may talk about the social stability, the crime rate, and social issues. Lower education attainment is correlated with higher rates of crime and other social issues, potentially leading to increased government expenditure on law enforcement and social services.
Commissioner, I noticed that in speaking, I've actually just noticed that some of the things that you're also touching are in turn actually going to be touched by the other two speakers. And I know that when you start talking about this, you could go on for the entire day. I can only imagine. But what I wanted to make sure is that we try to diversify the voice a little bit, because I know that Daphne has a question that is also coming up where she will be talking about what do we
Brian,
gain, what do we lose,
to conclude.
cost benefit, yeah?
I was about to conclude.
Okay, just in a
While
few.
Uganda might see short-term budgetary relief by not heavily investing in pre-primary education, the long-term costs in terms of educational achievement, economic potential, social equality, and overall national development are significant. Effective cost-benefit analysis suggests that the benefits of investing in pre-primary education far outweigh the immediate savings, as early childhood education lays a crucial foundation for future academic and professional success, social stability, and economic growth.
Yes.
Therefore, policymakers need to weigh these factors carefully when deciding on educational priorities.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And I like that, at one point when you were speaking, I was looking forward to what the other panelists had to say, because you talked about the benefits. And I was like, oh, we actually do have benefits. What are these? And I would love to know. But then moving on to Daphne to further add your voice to what exactly we lose, draw us that cost-benefit analysis.
Thank you very much, Brian. And I think I add the relief that when Assistant Commissioner was talking about the negative consequences, I was like, where are we? And yes, and I'm happy to see that in the end she talked about that they far outweigh, which is the key message that I wanted to bring. By starting with the statement that we look at it, I even said this earlier, mostly as a cost. But we want to shift that thinking. Let's not look at pre-primary as this is the cost. Let us look at this is an investment.
Yes.
And when I say this is an investment, Dr. Munir here in the morning said for every shilling, this is what the research that UNICEF carried out in collaboration with the Ministry of Education, for every 1 shilling that you invest in pre-primary education, you get 16.3 back. Now, most of us here in the working field, usually we look for how to to make our money add up, isn't it?
Yes.
We go for bonds, we'll go to SACCOs. We really want to increase the money that we get. But here I'm telling you, and I don't think anywhere that you will get for that 1 shilling, 16. You will not get it. This is a long-term investment that you give to your children. And I think that there is nobody here who is going to pay 1 shilling for pre-primary. But I want us to do some homework. I think the average cost is 50,000, if we say the lowest, for a term in pre-primary. You calculate that 50,000 times 16. What is it that you are getting?
Getting back, yes.
You see? So I think that's one key thing that I wanted to bring out. And I also wanted to say that often, as much as Madame Elizabeth here has talked about how important it is to invest in pre-primary, the reason that we hear the most about why that investment is actually not happening is the cost again. Yes, it is very expensive. And so we are not ready to start now. We don't have the funds. These are the reasons, and I understand that very genuine reasons that they are bringing. But in doing this research together, we were able to see applicable in Uganda. There are 3 key scenarios, and I want to really focus on these key scenarios, if you'll give me that time, that the ministry can take to be able to actually roll out free pre-primary education. The cost-benefit analysis talked about the first one, scenario A, which would be very fast. And it says that by 2040, if you implement this one, by 2040, you will have achieved over 90% of your children enrolled in pre-primary education. By increasing your budget, the education budget for pre-primary by 20%. This is very high. Yes, I know. In no terms, many people will say, I cannot give the 20% immediately. So there are 2 scenarios coming. I'm just begging your patience as you listen to me. 2 other scenarios. With this, in 2020, you do it very quick, 2030. This is just 6 years from now. You'll be able to achieve all children. It will no longer be a song that, we are not accessing. All children accessing pre-primary education. You would invest 4.69 trillion shillings in this. Mostly in capital, because this scenario is asking for a 20% budget increase, because to roll it out quickly, you have to put in the infrastructure, you have to recruit teachers, and that cost is very expensive at the beginning. But the benefit, as she was saying, highly outweighs, because in this scenario A, it has the highest benefit. You get 193.3 trillion shillings back. Remember the math I gave you in the beginning of 1 to 16. We are translating it now economically. So the highest benefit of 193.3 trillion shillings back. In scenario B, let's say this is medium. You don't want to go very quickly. You want to be cautious and say, okay, let's study this thing as we go. And let us delay a little more by 2040, 16 years in the future. Remember now, 16 years, the child who's born will be what you'll be calling a dropout if you don't do this, because they have not gone to school early and all that. You just add about 6 to 9% to the budget, to your budget for pre-primary. This cost is actually 2.17 trillion, but you will get back 155 trillion shillings. Think about the economy. 2040, I like this year because it is also it is in line with our vision, the NPA vision. So please, this is the medium scenario B, I'm calling it. Now let's go to scenario 3. Let's say, this one we have to take very slowly, because we have UPE, we have USC, we have Makerere, there's many priorities we have for education. Let's approach this slowly. In scenario C, then you'll be able to achieve enrollment in 2062, far much ahead in the future. And with that one, you only add 4%. Maybe you say this is the one we can be able to afford. So remember the scenarios I had. Do 20%, do it very quickly, you enroll a lot. Or give 6 to 9%, in 16 years, you're better. In this one, you add 4%. Again, remember this is the catch. The benefits are only, which is not bad, but they are only 74.5 trillion. Remember in scenario 1, you have 193 trillion. This is more than double. and you'd only invest less than $1 trillion shillings. So remember, in the first scenario, I was talking about almost 5 trillion shillings. In the second scenario, I was talking about 2 trillion. And now this is a little less than 1 trillion. So really, the emphasis in these scenarios is to say it is possible. And I want to highlight, I think Madam Commissioner did talk about some of this. I want to highlight something key. We've talked about repetition,
Yes.
high repetition rates. And it has. I just wanted to bring a statistic to show. Yes, we know that some children who attend pre-primary may also repeat, but this rate is much lower. It's 23% compared to 50% who did not attend pre-primary. So of those who did not attend pre-primary, if we say right now we are going as we are, let us continue. We are incurring this cost in high repetition. But if we are able to invest, what would happen, and this is very key, what would happen is that you would save 24.5 billion by 2030. This is a huge cost saving. And if you extrapolate this money, the scenarios I was talking about, and say, for example, let's start with scenario B, you'll be able to have the funds and enroll these children. We talked about dropout rate, the efficiency of the education system. We've mentioned that there are many overage or underage children. So with the underage children, we are already paying for them when they come before they are 6 years old. If we took those costs and invested them in the actual quality pre-primary education, we would be right on the mark. With the overage children, we are spending a lot of resources. I like Madam Hajat here, who was talking about how in her scenario, I think it is one of the best scenarios I've had, where they are able to give extra support to the children who did not go to preschool. In most cases, these children are left behind in overcrowded classrooms. Nobody attends to them. The teacher will move with the ones who are moving. Then these children will repeat. Again, you're spending efforts teaching the same child, trying to take them to a certain level. This same child may be the one who will drop out. We want to be able to attain our indicators and be at par with the countries that, and in moving forward. So we want to be able to say, yes, our children are enrolling on time, they are completing on time, and they are achieving. This is going to give us these benefits that I talked about, that 193.3 trillion, and help us to achieve and take Uganda to a better place and achieve the vision for Uganda. Thank you very much, Brian. I'll stop here.
Yes, thank you, Daphne. And I think you just got Joe at the right moment, because when you talk about the next stage that Uganda would be propelled to if this was in place, and that is what we want to know from her perspective. What do you think that place would look like in terms of social and economic development, that we had this free pre-primary education, if we had it?
Yeah, thank you, Brian. But first, I just want to thank Madam Elizabeth. I think your comments provided one of the most compelling arguments for free pre-primary that I've ever heard. So thank you very much. So we've talked a lot about the benefits, but to sort of envision what Uganda would be like if there was free universal pre-primary for every child, I think we can look at 4 key levels. One is the child. The benefits are undeniable. We've heard over and over this morning about children who attend nursery do better in school, they have better health, better job prospects, higher income as adults. One thing we haven't heard yet this morning is that pre-primary also contributes to lower rates of child labor, lower rates of child marriage, and lower rates of teen pregnancy. Second level, parents benefit. Pre-primary education increases the employment, the earnings, and the productivity of parents, especially mothers who are able to rejoin the workforce earlier. We know that outcomes are still poor. Only 40% of Ugandan children complete primary school. But providing just 1 year of free and compulsory pre-primary can increase primary completion rates by 12%. And scaling up pre-primary, as we've heard, also can reduce repetition by 50% and cut dropout rates by half. And finally, it benefits societies. There was a study that came out last year looking at global economic development. It found that over the past 40 years, half of global economic growth has been because of investments in education. Mm-hmm. And that education investments have also been responsible for 40% of extreme poverty reduction. Isn't that amazing? Yes. That half of the world's global economic growth has been because of education. And we know that pre-primary education can reduce social and economic inequalities. This is particularly important for Uganda, which has the 35th highest rate of gaps between the wealthy and the poor in the world. And as Madam Elizabeth also mentioned, it can reduce public health expenditures in law enforcement, in medical care, and the justice system. So, we've heard from Daphne about the cost-benefit analysis, and there have been multiple studies over the years that show that investing in pre-primary education is truly one of the best returns of any investment. So I think it's no exaggeration to say that ensuring that every child in Uganda has access to free and quality nursery is one of the best things that Uganda could do for its future. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That sounded very visionary and prophetic. But yes, just to say, I think we can all agree that one of the common denominators in the conversation is that it is important, and it is circular in its effect or its impact in the sense that it not happening has, impact on several other things. It could be from health, it could be economic development, as you're saying. So I think that further emphasizes the imperative. And then lastly, I'll just go to Hajat Fatuma, and then we shall be wrapping up with the panel discussion. And it could be that some of the things you had briefly hinted on them, but we just want to know what some of those challenges have been that you've faced as a teacher due to the status quo being that we do not have government pre-primary education. What are some of those challenges as a teacher?
Thank you very much, Brian. Okay. Thank you very much, Brian. As you have all heard about the benefits, it all comes back to the primary teacher. Once a child does not go to the nursery school, the workload for the primary teacher is too much, because sometimes we need to intermarry and get the framework for the nursery school, and we support these children to help them to improve in the learning process. We also have limited resources as a challenge. In a nursery school, we have what we call play learning. They play through games, storytelling, having many materials in nursery school, whereby in primary schools, it is hard for us to have those play materials. When you look at some nursery schools which are well facilitated, children learn many things from those nursery schools. But in primary school, we have a syllabus to follow, and we find that sometimes we don't complete that syllabus just because we are going back to pick the framework of nursery. That is also a challenge to us. In order to get performance, you have to go back and teach this child some nursery work, like introduction to letters, sounds, because it limits you. You cannot teach a child when she or he doesn't know how to read and write. In lack of preparation, these children are not prepared. We spend more time on foundation learning because they are not prepared to be in school. the nursery schools prepare them for us, but we find that challenge that they are not prepared to be in school. We also find it difficult in assessing readiness of the learners. Teachers may struggle to assess students' readiness for primary school. We also have lack of support staff. Since we have two groups of people of learners in one class, we need support staff, those people who are there to help them to learn the nursery, like taking them to toilets. Since we receive them when they have already learned how to go to toilet, but we need that support staff to help us in primary schools. And another challenge we have is a big number of children coming in a P1, primary one. You find that in a primary school like Nakasero, P1 we have 120 learners, and there are 2 teachers there, and these teachers need, and these learners, they are of different abilities, since some of them never went to their nursery schools. We also have the challenge of the curriculum. Teachers may need to adopt the curriculum to meet the changes. It is time consuming for us if we have to get the other curriculum. These challenges are important for we need the government. I'm concluding by saying that we need the government to create more pre-primary schools in government schools to reduce the workload we have for children who have not gone in pre-primary schools. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you very much, Fatuma, for wrapping it up very beautifully. And at this point, I will be relieving my panelists. I would have loved to have a parting shot from all of you, but then I also know there is a session where we're going to have the audience ask a few questions, and that will yet be another opportunity for us to say a thing or two. Otherwise, thank you very much for the deliberations. I think you'll all agree with me that they've been a very brilliant panel, haven't they? Oh, I can't hear that. Have they? Yes, thank you. You can now take your seat. Thank you very much. Yes, thank you very much. So what is going to happen at this moment, we realize that you've been without sugars for a very long period of time. You've been seated. I can see on this table, the madam over here is looking at me and smiling at the good news that I've just talked about. But yes, we shall be having a break. So at this moment, but we shall be having a very short break, and that is for 10 minutes. So in this moment, you'll just step out, you grab a bite. There is tea over there. I'm sure you saw it while you're coming in. So just grab it quickly and come back in. In exactly 10 minutes, we shall be continuing with the program, and that will be the launch of the research report. Yes, so let's step out quickly.
I'd already registered the minister's apologies. I will not repeat that. I want to go straight to the message the minister has for you. Ladies and gentlemen, I salute and warmly welcome you all to this colorful event of launching the report on pre-primary education in Uganda. I want to acknowledge and commend the efforts of the Human Rights and the Initiative for Social and Economic Rights to conduct research and come up with the report that we are launching today. Before I proceed, I wish to highlight the fact that the government of Uganda enjoys unmatched commitment towards eliminating inequalities and barriers in the access to education, especially among the vulnerable and marginalized groups in our society. For instance, in 1997, we commenced the implementation of the Universal Primary Education, a program that has granted opportunities to millions of people to access primary education. Later on, the government realized that many children that were completing primary education level but unable to join the secondary education due to unaffordability of the school fees. Consequently, in 2007, 10 years after the commencement of the implementation of UPE, we introduced the free secondary education program, thus becoming the first country in sub-Saharan Africa to introduce universal secondary education. Concerning the delivery of pre-primary education, in the Education, Pre-Primary, Primary and Post-Primary Act of 2008, the government assigned the responsibility of establishing and running pre-primary schools to private agencies or persons, and the financing of such education to parents or guardians of the children. On this part, the government committed itself to the following: 1, to provide curriculum, guidelines on minimum standards for school buildings, equipment, and other relevant facilities for pre-primary institutions through its relevant agencies. 2, provide the curriculum for teacher training for pre-primary teachers and ensure that the teachers who teach in pre-primary institutions have the necessary qualifications. 3, cause all the pre-primary schools to be licensed, registered, and regularly inspected by government education inspectors. So those were the 3 core responsibilities of government, having assigned the responsibility of providing pre-primary education to the private sector. The above commitment has to some extent facilitated access to pre-primary education. However, we are still grappling with the challenge of limited access to pre-primary education, especially in rural areas. Yet, it is a vital stage in building the foundation for human capital development and our country's general socio-economic growth. Early childhood learning has profound long-term benefits for children's cognitive and social development. Their health, future education attainment, and employment, plus other opportunities later in life. Interesting to note is that the pace of brain development is at its highest in the first years of life. So this period represents a critical opportunity to make a positive difference in children's lives. Pre-primary education also mitigates inequalities among children from families of different incomes and contributes to country's economic development since it improves employment prospects and earnings. This is not only beneficial to the individuals, but even to the state, because a productive population is capable of contributing to state growth through increased revenue, resulting in increase of taxes. Furthermore, the realization of the free quality pre-primary education would require both physical and legal commitments and reforms. Currently, the government's obligation towards pre-primary education is majorly regulatory. So this responsibility here is a regulation. And I want to inform you, ladies and gentlemen, that a week ago, government or cabinet approved the ECC policy. And I think this is a very big milestone in the development of ECD in the education sector. The provision and financing obligations rest with the private sector and parents or guardians respectively. Government's plan is to consolidate on the UPE before it turns fully to pre-primary education. However, it's important to note that the government has not just realized, it has always been regulating and guiding on pre-primary education. That's why we mentioned that the government has been licensing and registering the pre-primary schools. For the government to take on the responsibility of providing free primary education, pre-primary education, it will necessitate an amendment of Section 10(2) of the Education Pre-Primary, Primary and Post-Primary Act of 2008. But that one shouldn't be an impediment. It can be addressed very fast when the government is ready to fully take on pre-primary education. Additionally, the government, if possible, will need to commit funds to provide infrastructure, human resource, and instructional materials to guarantee access to pre-primary education, especially in rural areas. As a Ministry of Education and Sports, we have a clear procedure which we normally follow that includes discussing the recommendations of the report like this one in our senior management and top management, and consequently presenting the same recommendation to Cabinet for adoption by the entire government. So that's the procedure government has to take, especially on this report. It may take some time to go through the necessary levels of debating, but nevertheless it can be done and the recommendations implemented thereafter. Once again, I want to thank the research team, the Human Rights Watch, and ISER for coming up with this comprehensive report on pre-primary education in Uganda, and it is my greatest wish to see that the recommendations therein are followed up and implemented as soon as possible. I thank you for listening to me, and thank especially our friends from the International Children's Watch who are here, who joined us in this launch, ISER, all the stakeholders, the ministry officials who have been part of this research, and all other people. We say thank you for your contribution. I therefore take this opportunity to officially launch this report for God and my country. Thank you. And ISER and
markers down there. So we're going to sign.
okay. I've already performed a ritual repeated. I want to take this opportunity of that of Ministry of Education and Sports and officially
Microphone. The handheld one. It's over here.
I want to take this opportunity on behalf of the Ministry of Education and Sports to officially launch this report, which has come out of the research conducted by ISER, and now the report is officially launched. And okay. So the report now is launched.
Yes. Can have some of the other officials sign as well. Yes, had you just step back a little bit, shall have a group picture.